Okay, great. Great to move on. I would like to thank you for being back, and I would like to continue with our next student, our next presentation, and welcome on stage Nish Nish, help me out. Manjunath. Nish Manjunath. Sorry, Nish, I should know by now, right? I apologize. Nish Manjunath. I'm going to read a little bit about Nish. It's from Sydney, Australia, a tenor saxophonist and clarinetist now based in Boston, Massachusetts. He has performed alongside Walter Smith III, Arturo Sandoval, and Arrested Development, among others. He values melodicism and lyricism in his music making and is comfortable playing in a variety of style and musical settings. And we would like to welcome, as part of this committee, his advisor is Irini Tornesaki, who is connecting remotely, and Professor Victor Wallace. Thank you for being with us today. Please welcome again, with a big applause, Nish Manjunath.
Thank you, Marco. Yeah, wow. I can't even remember when I wrote that bio. I'm comfortable playing in a variety of styles. Wow. Okay. Anyway, that's right. But I just want to thank everyone for coming out today and being here. It means a lot to me. I have a video presentation for you. The whole thing is a video from start to finish. And yeah, it's almost 20 minutes long, so I better hit play. Thank you, everyone.
The fact is that our present course is a non-sustainable course, which means by definition that it cannot be maintained. And the outcome is going to get resolved within a few decades. That means that those of us in this room who are less than 50 or 60 years old will see how these paradoxes are resolved, and those of us who are over the age of 60 may not see the resolution, but our children and grandchildren certainly will. The resolution is going to achieve either of two forms. Either we'll resolve these non-sustainable time fuses in pleasant ways of our own choice by taking remedial action, or else these conflicts are going to get settled in unpleasant ways not of our choice, namely by war, disease, or starvation. But what is for sure is that our non-sustainable course will get resolved in one way or another in a few decades.
Our society is built upon a deeply unsustainable framework. And the most pertinent question to me that this suggests is our Western democratic society actually resilient enough to withstand a collapse? Immediately upon hearing this word collapse, our minds might make a connection to images we've seen in the media through Hollywood, where lives are turned upside down overnight by cataclysmic events. However, in reality, the history of the collapse of civilizations has always proven to be a slow, grinding process as far as human perception of time is concerned. We all may have an inherent sense of the true scale of our unsustainability deep down, but I don't think it will reach the consciousness of the average citizen. And it's because of this, I find myself wondering, are we going to make it? 1972, the book Limits to Growth, written by a team of MIT researchers, painted a stark picture of the future of human globalized society. The book, whose purpose was to model possible future scenarios based on the statistics available at the time on energy reserves, production, and consumption, had three aims. As each year has passed by since the publication of this report, society has continually showed a trend of increased production, population growth, financial growth, and inflation, and the growth of the demand on non-renewable natural resources. The central idea of catabolic collapse is that a dynamic system such as globalized society must require an ever-increasing supply of resources to sustain its growth. And if the system was to ever outgrow the availability of resources, our growth would begin to slow and eventually stop and begin a process of collapse. Our exponential growth over the last 3 centuries has been brought to you by the use of fossil fuels as our primary energy.
This is coal. Don't be afraid. Don't be scared.
The Treasurer knows the rules.
Every single object, item, or material that you own, as well as every article, artifact, gadget, and thing in this room and in the entire world came into existence because of fossil fuels. Just try to visualize for just a second the absolute colossal dependence the continuation of contemporary life has on non-renewable fossil fuels. The lights don't really run on anything else. But the problem isn't actually that we'll run out of fossil fuels to burn anytime particularly soon, not for another 470 years or so. The problem is maybe that we just have too many fossil fuels to burn, because while it's been the reason for the catalyst of our dramatic boom, fossil fuels have been poisoning our chances to sustain our huge population through the steady degradation of the Earth's natural processes. If temperatures continue to rise, basic adequate food production and mass supply of fresh water could be in jeopardy. Factoring in the staggering levels of wealth inequality of our world into that equation, and what we have left on the table is the estimation of 200 million climate refugees by the year 2050.
What happened?
Ran out of juice. The world runs on fossil fuel. I mean, how stupid is that?
The Earth's processes and local climates work together in symbiosis and have established themselves over billions of years. One particular environmental tragedy which astonishes me is the projected Blue Ocean event to take place at some point in the 2030s. When looking at the Arctic region through a satellite image time-lapse, you will observe that the white sea ice in the Arctic Ocean expands and contracts across hundreds of miles through the seasons, like a metaphorical pair of lungs for the planet. In the summer of a not too distant future, that sea ice will melt completely. And what we will see through a satellite at that point is a completely dark blue Arctic Ocean, absorbing latent heat through the albedo effect. No more ice in the Arctic Ocean. And if we completely stopped all emissions today, we still might not avoid that eventuality. So when all of this theory and information and scientific projection is so readily available, even for a lowly saxophone player to find, shouldn't someone in a position of power also have heard about some of this stuff too? Shouldn't I expect to find the rest of the planet as alarmed and shocked as I am, and walk out onto Boylston Street this afternoon to see an unprecedentedly massive international mobilization of people and resources to fight these impending conditions? Shouldn't we have already acted decisively? Business as usual can't continue. We know too much and have projected far too much human suffering to permit us to do nothing. We need to rethink our world dramatically and soon, and understand the monumental undertaking this would be. Avoiding the worst will certainly mean altering the central tenets of capitalism. The endless growth and profiteering which are built into the DNA of our society must be stopped. And the task is made harder by the fact that the fossil fuel companies are twisting the strings of democracy to resist any adaptation away from their current business model. The entire system presents itself as an omnipresent obstruction.
There is a lesson. The world is a unity. The national boundaries have no bearing on these global environmental issues. No one nation can solve this problem by itself. It has to be all the nations working together. What's more, there is no way to mitigate these problems. Solving these problems requires a transnational and a transgenerational perspective. To my mind, that's a very grown-up kind of perspective. De-provincialized, de-chauvinized, an awareness of one species on one exquisite, fragile planet.
Let's try to take control back one square at a time. We need to create the seedlings of a new system. One where tyrannical private ownership is a thing of the past and where decision-making power can't be consolidated into the hands of a minority at the top. The seedlings of a new world need to be nurtured and protected. They must take the form of hyper-sustainable grassroots communities and action and coalesce quickly into larger, more powerful systems and networks of sustainability.
We don't have enough morally laden exemplars that have gritty, deep convictions and stout-hearted causes that they're willing to live and die for. Young folk, the challenge becomes, do you have enough courage, but not just courage? Courage and magnanimity produce fortitude. I saw great courage in the eyes of my neo-Nazi brothers and sisters in Charlottesville just a few weeks ago. Yes, I saw a lot of courage. I could see blazing in their eyes, unbelievable determination, a willingness to live and die. But we need more than just courage. We need spiritual and moral dimensions that are tied to that courage. We need fortitude. We need greatness of character. We need magnanimity. That fortitude that embraces
Thank you very much, everyone.
Wow, what a journey, Nish. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to start the second part of the presentation, and I'm going to turn the microphone to your panel member, Victor. Thank you so much for being with us. You can stay.
Thank you. Thank you. My first word is congratulations. I think it's a very well done educational product. I will want to use it in my class, for one thing. Because it succeeds in bringing together the necessary information and analysis with a terrific combination of images and sounds. So it keeps people's concentration, I think, in a very good way. And it does, in terms of the substance, it poses the fundamental issue of the kind of system that we live under. And of course, that can't be answered in a single film. And the steps that need to be taken to implement hope as a verb will require further discussion. It'll be another challenge. I think maybe your next project will be another film about the much even harder question. I mean, because in a sense, all this dramatic destruction is something that everybody is generally aware of, but it's good to have the specifics, it's good to have your focusing on the analysis, but it does also tend to give people a sense of powerlessness. And even though you talk about hope and the need to make hope a verb, and you show images of people demonstrating and holding up signs, and you also give a hint of those who are responsible for the destruction, all that is, say, preparatory to creating the actual structures that will get in the place, that will replace all that, and how we can build them. So this is, I'm not saying that anyone has the answer to that, but it's something that perhaps you could reflect on a little bit now as you think of what follows after what you've done for us here. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Wallace. Thank you. Nish, wow. I'm a little breathless, you know. When I saw you last week, you showed me a little bit of the beginning, and I said, well, that was intense. It's like, can you maintain this intensity for 20 minutes? And you definitely did. And I'm sort of in awe for, you know, many things, but the production of it. Can you speak a little bit about how you created all of this? It was all you?
Yeah, it was everything aside for the drums and percussion was mostly me, yeah, aside from a couple of things and the video.
And can you talk a little bit more about the video, how you produce everything, and you had previous experience doing this sort of...
Yeah, I suppose I've done it a lot for myself, just over the years. I mean, I guess it first started off as just creating promo for myself, and it's just snowballed from there. Like, I've done hundreds of them by now. And yeah, no, it's a real interest of mine, and I think like the control I have between composing the music and producing the video. Yeah, I really enjoy how much control you have in telling a story with those two mediums kind of working together. Yeah, you know, when sounds can happen at the same time as visuals, it's just like a really multi-sensory experience. And when there's a message attached to that, then it just maybe comes across really strongly.
Yeah, it is. You know, it's so intentional in everything from the beginning to the end. I was so amazed by how good this video look. You know, beside the message you're sending, that is, you know, it's kind of take your breath away. And I do agree with you, Professor. It's sort of at one point you start feeling a little bit like powerless. You know, about receiving so much input. But that aside, I was also kind of like getting the old multimedia production that you created. And can you speak a little bit more because also the music seems so intentional in making us feel in a certain way. Can you talk a little bit that from that point of view, like as a composer and thinking about this idea?
Yeah, I suppose I had the themes. I sort of so this whole journey started off by reading about how that report I mentioned from 1972, the book Limits to Growth, they retested it in 2002 on its 30th anniversary and 2022 on its 50th anniversary, and they found, like, this is when I first heard about it, they found that the rechecking of the experiment led to outcomes that were further along than where they said we'd be at this point. So, that was just shocking.
In other words, it's worse what they predicted.
Than what they predicted, yeah. So that just started off a whole, a process of research, and I just tried to break it down into, okay, what is the narrative here? And there's a whole study of dynamic systems where people try and model incredibly complex systems on a graph. Like, actually, in the book, they have a graph, like a sort of flow chart of the world system, and it's incredible. Like, just it's really small, obviously, in the book, but it's just really dense. Like, it's a giant flow chart. There's like 100 different processes. So the first song, I wanted to try and convey that. Just the fact that people have been studying this and people have been seeing the writing on the wall since 1972. And, I can only imagine the frustration it must be to be someone who's studying climate science and, having to turn up to work every day with the proof in front of you, or with at least with the most compelling evidence in front of you that the projection is that society could start to collapse by the mid-century, right? That's what they knew in 1972. So that was the first song. I wanted to just convey a state of panic, a state of frustration. The second song, I wanted to talk about how the key thing to understand about the human impact on the world is the fact that the processes are exponential and they're feedback loops. So, I think I said in the video that even if we clicked our fingers and stopped all emissions right now, there's still a 46% chance the temperature will rise to 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. And that has a whole host of consequences to it. I think we're at like 1.2 or 3 at the moment, right? So, I don't know what level of pandemic we would need for us to stop emitting tomorrow, but essentially that's just not going to happen. So the exponentiality, that was like a big theme, I think, that runs through everything. We have exponential population growth, which leads to exponential pollution, which leads to exponential demand on resources. So that second song was all about exponentiality. The third song, I suppose, was also thinking about the reason, like, for why do those processes exist? It's because wealth accumulates just incredibly narrowly at the top. And, we're well beyond, like, feudal levels of inequality in the world, wealth inequality, like well beyond anything we've ever seen before, right? So change isn't going to come from the top. Change is going to come from the top, because the way I see it is that, if fossil fuel energy runs the world, the controllers of fossil fuel energy run the world, right? The distributors of that resource are the real shot callers in our world. So change isn't going to come from the top, not from a government level. There's no incentive, right? So it has to come from a grassroots level. It has to come, we're talking about starting the process of being a collective and working collectively on these issues. Like, we're not even on the field yet, we let alone scored any points. And yeah, so I think the first step is to just spread the knowledge and spread the awareness. And if people just have some kind of literacy about the, I'm not a scientist, but or really can explain you the processes in any real like scientific detail, but I'm trying my best to understand, because it's something that's going to affect all of us equally. And that's where I think that, as Victor wrote in his book, Red Green Revolution, like the environmental movement is also a social justice movement because it's a chance to reform our world and it's a chance to reshape all those values. And if we're going to be able to do anything about it, it's going to come from tackling that extremely narrow accumulation of wealth. And really that's the kind of perpetrator of a lot of the problems that we see, right? With the gentrification and, kicking out of black communities in DC. Like that issue is also coming from the systemic problem of wealth inequality, So, And I think that's the reason for hope. Like that's the reason for why we should take action, because we need to get the motors turning. And it's funny, like when you're watching the Celtics, did anyone watch the last final the other weekend ago? When the Celtics are down by 12 with 25 seconds to go, people tend to stop talking about hope, right? If you're a Celtics fan, you're not going to be like, okay, the talent's on the field. We have the capability in the world to change it right now. We have a food surplus. We have more food in the world than hungry mouths. And we have, the amount of wealth and resources and agency to do everything about it. So the question is, why aren't we? Why haven't we? And I think the answer is that there's just no incentive in this system to tackle those problems. It's too expensive. It's too expensive to solve those problems, and it's too inefficient in the process of making profit and money. That's my reason for hope, is that the more people we can get thinking and talking about this, the more power we have, because there is more of us. This problem is going to affect more of us than it is of the, to quote Bernie Sanders, the top 1%. So, I think it's just super important that we all know about this and unify, use it as a chance to unify. Yeah.
So, yeah. Wow. So, Nish, my next natural question is, what are your plans next with this project? Are you thinking about what your next steps?
I still am learning about it, and I'm still trying to figure out exactly what my response is going to be in terms of like what I'm actually going to do. But I think there's some really interesting ideas out there about how to run businesses democratically instead of in an authoritarian model. So, for example, I think Noam Chomsky talks about this a little bit. The idea of democratic corporatism, where it's actually the working body of a company owns the company. So they get a say and they decide collectively in where in the company's actions. So, I think that could happen. It's a very long way away, but it just takes one democratic business to start to inspire another democratic business. And I think if so the answer is, what am I going to do? I'm going to work on myself and be an example of this and what I'm going to talk about. And obviously still putting it together, but hopefully one day organize some kind of sustainable organization. The thing is that this whole year has just been involved with me understanding the problem, and it'll probably take a whole other year to figure out my solution to it. But I think there's some really interesting ideas out there and hopeful ideas, and if we can spread them around far enough, then we it's the best chance we have, basically.
Well, I do hope that you will go in that direction. You proved today to be a very articulate, intelligent, prepared spokesperson, and I'm very impressed by the level of depth and by how such a linear thinking in clear thinking about this, and artistically, I'm extremely inspired by everything I heard and I saw. So, congratulations, Nish. Congratulations.
Thanks so much.
Is there any? Is there ability for any to talk? Or send a question? I don't think so. So I didn't think.
Nish, congratulations. Fantastic. This work proves so many areas of your creativity. The talent you have as a producer, I wanna acknowledge that. To produce this, that was a lot of work, man. And produce it at that level of quality and the sincerity and the love. I've heard you talking about this since I met you, actually, and to follow your path and to continue on that path. And I do agree with Professor Victor that when you look at this as an artistic point of view, it's very overwhelming, and it's actually give me with a sense of like, and then what do we do? And I think it would be very important that as the presentation goes along, after you refine it, you also do a little bit of research of some of the other people that you are aligning your ideas to it, because you might find a lot of support and interconnection with it from the scientific point of view, from the social change point of view. For example, when you talk about waste and how, as an artist, we can do these projects that are dealing with recyclable material to create musical instrument. Those are the kind of people you want to interact with, maybe do concerts together. You see what I mean? But the voice that you're bringing on is a voice that calls attention. And I would just do a little survey around the world and ask, and even go into the realms of politics. The call that you're making is a very strong one. The message is in the presentation, and I'm excited to see what your solutions are. I have an idea to think about, for example, the urgency that you see in the war in Ukraine. All of a sudden, a lot of things they show up. Money, resources, but it's a call for urgency. How do we use the internet to create that calling in the world? With that talent you have for production of, creating visuals and music and all of that, I would be interested to see what you come out with. In other words, to see if you can get the opposite reaction from me. When I look at it, I would like to say, I sign off on it. Where is the war? I'm going.
Yeah.
See if you can tilt that Call of Duty in there. And I can't wait to see this in the theaters, man.
Absolutely. Congratulations, Nish.
Thank you, everyone.
Congratulations.
Yeah, I just want to once again acknowledge Victor and thank you for coming out. I really appreciate you being here. I suppose we've got more happening now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Don't go anywhere.
Not going anywhere. We're going to have 2 more presentations today. Thank you.